Greetings. Welcome to this discussion of Chapter 1's comprehensive problem. Chapter 1's comprehensive problem is available on page 61, so I would ask you to look at, to turn there. That's where you'll find it. And then, as the name would imply, comprehensive means it's going to be reviewing all the parts of the chapter, so you're going to have a pretty good understanding of how to do all the parts. Excuse me. I encourage you to open the worksheet that is available at the bottom of the week 2 in the class, and open that spreadsheet, and then you'll notice that it's actually a Word document. It's a Word document, and what I have done is normally you would be preparing all of this. You would be writing all of this information, preparing all of these headings, putting information into columns. And what I'm trying to do to help you out instead of that is I'm trying to pick aspects of the problem that you will work on, and then you can look at the other aspects and say, if I were doing this full problem, I'd have to put in the name of the company, and I'd have to put in accounting equation, and I'd have to put in assets, liabilities, and owners as stockholders' equity, and I'd have to put in land and cash and notes payable. I would be entering those to set this up, and I'd have plus signs and equal signs to keep this accounting equation in balance. And I'd have the events, and I'd number the events. So as we look at this comprehensive problem, we worked, you were asked to look at least the sample problem, and the sample problem solution looks very much like this, except this has, it's a little bit more information, a few more transactions, a little bit more work than what we had at the first one, but it's the end of the chapter now. It's the time to be finishing up. So in the first, on this comprehensive problem, it says, I'm going to read it to you again, the following information is available from Basilico Security Services, Inc. for 2011. Its first year of operations. Basilico provides security services for local sporting events. So we've all seen the security staff around sporting events. The following summary transactions occurred. So they have 8 transactions that occurred in 2011. And then what's required of us? To record the above transactions in an accounting equation. So you can look at this spreadsheet, see in an accounting equation, and say, all right, I saw that on page 25. I could set one of those up, and I could do that. Provide the appropriate account titles for the amount shown in the retained earnings column. So when I get to the retained earnings column way over there on the right, and I'm starting to use it, I'm going to have to remember to put in those service accounts. So I left those in there for you, so all you have to worry about is numbers. But if you were doing this whole problem, you would do all of these parts. Then prepare an income statement, statement of owner's equity, balance sheet, and income statement. So in number 1, we're to record the transactions. In number 2, we're to prepare the financial statements. So let's look at these transactions and see how they might go together. Number 1 says, acquired $6,000 from the issuance of common stock. So you have acquired or taken in $6,000. So the first event is issued stock, and that's $6,000, which you put in the cash column, and then it's for common stock, which you put in the common stock column. So you want to make sure that that's in each of those columns. Remember, this is a Word document. This is not an Excel. It's not going to be adding for you. It's not going to be subtracting, that sort of thing. You're just going to be putting the information in, and then you're going to have to manually get those numbers, I think, at the bottom, because this will not add. This worksheet will not add. So then for borrowed $5,000 from the small business government, the loan is interest-free. So now for number 2, it's a loan, and I borrowed, so $5,000 is going to go into the cash column because the cash is going up by $5,000. And now the notes payable are going up by $5,000. And I owe somebody more money than I did before. Specifically, I owe the Small Business Government Agency. So transaction 3, borrowed security, perform security services at a local sporting event during the year for $9,000 in cash. So provided security services for $9,000 in cash. Cash is going to go up by $9,000. I'm using commas, so mine looks just like theirs. And then you go over to retained earnings and you put in $9,000, and I left in there security services revenue. So that's where the $9,000 came from. Number 4, paid salaries expense. So paid is the operative word to know that cash went down. So I'm going to have a negative sign in front of $3,000 so that I know that this cash was paid out. And then it's for salary, so over in the retained earnings I'm going to have minus, and I'm going to put in $3,000 for those services. And then number 5 says purchased land for $4,000. So purchased land means my cash went down by $4,000 because I purchased something, so my cash is smaller. And I purchased land, $4,000, but my land is going up. So now cash and land are on the same side of the equal sign, but one of them has a minus and one of them has a plus. So that keeps that side of the equation in balance. Number 6 says paid other operating expenses of $2,000. So I have a minus $2,000 in cash for those expenses, and over in retained earnings I have minus $2,000 for those other operating expenses. The expenses are causing retained earnings to go down. Number 7 says paid a cash dividend. Paid a cash dividend to the shareholders. So paid a dividend is going to be a minus, and since it's a cash dividend, $2,500. And then dividends are going to go down by minus $2,500. Now in this problem, everything is in retained earnings. We're not, we don't have an income statement with a separate column for revenues and expenses and changes in equity through dividends. So we just leave it all in the retained earnings. Now number 8 says the market value of land was determined to be. It's just like the example in the sample problem where when you read that, it said the very same instructions, and all it means is there was no transaction to record here, no exchange of assets for assets on this transaction. Somebody just told us that our land would be appraised for more than it had been before. So we are not in a position of recording a transaction because there's no outside exchange value exchanged outside of the enterprise to validate a new historical cost. So now you have all of these entries and you must algebraically sum the totals. So you will now have to get out the Excel or get out a hand calculator. You could probably copy and paste these into an Excel document and it would add them for you. So that might be the fastest way even than putting them into a hand calculator. It's just to open an Excel, copy each of those columns and then sum them and then put the totals in. Once you've put the totals in, then you will always want to double check and make sure the two assets add together to one amount and the three liability and owner's equity transactions add together to equal one another, so that this is in balance. So I'm going to leave those proof steps to you to get a total for each of these columns, add together the entries that are on one side of the equal sign, add together the entries that are on the other side of the equal sign by their totals, and the math tells us that the sum of the parts add together to make a total, and so the sum of the parts will get you those subtotals. Totaling the subtotals will get you all the grand totals for each side of the equation. Then it says our next assignment is, our next requirement is to prepare financial statements. So if you scroll on down the comprehensive problem, you'll see that I have left the income statement here. If you were doing the entire problem all on your own, you'd have to write in those headings, you'd have to write in those accounts, you'd have to put in the amounts for the revenues and the expenses, and then you would get the net income. So I'm going to leave you to calculate the net income and then enter it in front of that dollar sign. And that's the net income of this company. Next, we get the statement of change in stockholders' equity. Now notice that there's the title to the company, there's the title of the statement, there's the date of the statement. You do the contributed capital first and the earned capital second. So we've got the beginning common stock, which isn't given there, so you're going to have to solve for that one. But if you look, it says some number plus 6,000 equals 6,000. So you will insert the 0 there in the beginning common stock cell. Then we've got the earned capital. So the beginning retained earnings was 0. And then the net income was 4,000. The expenses were 2,500, so it says plus net income less the dividends. And the net income, of course, comes straight out of the income statement where you calculated the net income up there at the top. And then you get the total is 1,500, so now you want to know the 6,000 plus the 1,500. You want to enter that in for total stockholders' equity, the contributed capital by the owners and the earned capital by the business. Next comes the balance sheet. The balance sheet presents the assets, the liabilities, and the owner's equity. The accounting equation says that assets are going to be equal to liabilities plus owner's equity. So now we have assets and we have cash and land, and then you'll put in the total there in this statement for the cash and the land. Then we have liabilities, and you'll put in the total for the liabilities. Then we have stockholders' equity of 6,000 and of 1,500 for the contributed capital and the earned capital. And you'll put in the total of those numbers. Then you'll add together the total liabilities and stockholders' equity. And remember, they have to equal the assets. So I'll leave you to enter those and to check the totals. Finally, we have the statement of cash flows. And so the company's name goes in first. The statement of cash flow title goes in next. For the year ended December 31st. Remember, only the balance sheet is at the point in time. All the rest of them are for the year's coverage. We have cash flows from operating activities first. We have 3 operating activities, and you'll calculate the amount of cash that came in from operating activities. We had cash flow from investing activities, and you will you see that we had one investing activity, which was the purchase of the land. So you'll put in the $4,000. The $4,000 is in for you, and you'll put in the total from the cash flow from investing activities. And then you have cash flow from financing activities. Now notice that these are all net amounts, net cash flows. So you want to get the net cash flows from financing activities by algebraically summing those three numbers. Now, next we want to calculate, we have those three cash flows, so the increase in increase in these three numbers should equal, the sum of these three numbers should equal the $8,500 that is given to you as the net increase in cash flow. Now, if I hadn't left that number in there for you, you would have to add those together and trust that yours equals. But this way you get the experience of adding yours together and then making sure that they equal the $8,500. Now then you insert the ending cash balance and put that in there, and the number you get there you come up and check against the cash in the balance sheet and make sure that that's the cash in the balance sheet. Now what you should do with this is save this to your computer, this Word document, save it to your computer, and then save it on a flash drive or an external hard drive of some sort for your backup. And when you've done those two steps, then you should post the file to the Dropbox, which is which is the box that announces the comprehensive problem. You click on that comprehensive problem, the first line there, and you open it up. When you open it up, that will be your Dropbox, and you'll put this file into that Dropbox. So this is the comprehensive problem for the end of Chapter 1. You can see how much it would truly be comprehensive if you were writing all of these numbers and looking them up and finding them in the problem. Instead, I've left them structured for you and just asked you to calculate some of the totals so you get familiar with looking at the entries into the financial statements and then adding together those totals. This ends our work with Chapter 1. I would highly recommend rereading Chapter 1 now after doing the comprehensive problem. You'll be amazed at how much the information seems similar to you, how easy it is, how easy it would be to highlight what is important in the chapter, what's emphasized in the chapter, so that you could go ahead then and take your test on Chapter 1. I want to remind you again that the information on page 14 and 25 is the same information. It's just that by 25 the equation gets much larger, but you can still use it to solve word problems for an unknown. And you want to be sure that you have command of that skill. Now, this has been your introduction to accounting. You've learned about the environment of accounting and careers, and what accountants do, but you've also begun to learn about how accountants work in enterprises to capture economic transactions, record them, then accumulate them, aggregate them together, and produce them into financial statements. Right now your form of aggregation is putting entries into that accounting equation. That will change for you in the soon coming chapters, so that you will learn new additional ways of aggregating transactions as we get to fuller problems. I've enjoyed working with you for Chapter 1. If you have any questions, send me an email, bring it to class, come to my office hours, and I will be happy to answer them for you. Thank you for joining me on this comprehensive problem solution review.